JBH Boutique Care offers you a unique exclusive membership in our nationwide concierge medical services network. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Judine Bontemps-Hill. I'm double board certified in family and obesity medicine. We pair exclusive personalized care with accessibility and convenience. A better way for you to receive immediate quality medical care. Whether at our main Orlando, Florida office, traveling across the U.S. or visiting the States, we bring you the best medical care without waiting for an appointment. Become a member today by calling 407-234-5282 or visit us online at jdhmeg1.com. JBH Boutique Care is proud to sponsor Sounds of the Diaspora, music and conversations with artists, and host Dion Parson every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Source TV Radio Network, WTSN, Washington, D.C.
Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sounds of the Diaspora, artist to artist, a conversation with yours truly, Dion Parson. It's an honor and a pleasure to have this week's guest here with us this evening. I've known him for many, many years, and he's making a great name. He's, doing wonderful things in the musical industry. And he's from St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. He's a trombonist, composer, producer, band leader, and educator. Please join me in welcoming to Sounds of the Diaspora, Mr. Reginald Cyntje.
Thank you for having me.
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm well. Can't.
Good. So you're back in Washington D.C. right now, right?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Back home.
It was good seeing you last week in St. Thomas, man. We did that big band concert.
Good vibe.
Yeah, we had a good time. So you're doing wonderful things in the D.C. area, man, and that's kind of where your home is right now, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
How long you been there?
D.C. probably off and on for almost 30 years. Off and on.
Okay. So that's home.
Yeah.
That's home. Okay.
So home and St. Thomas.
Yeah, between it's funny how like all of us Virgin Islanders will say, yeah, I've been in New York for 30 years, but St. Thomas is my home. You can't deny your roots and your heritage. But so you're from St. Thomas, you grew up there, and you had a really fruitful musical upbringing. So share with our audience, your time growing up in Virgin Islands.
When I started, actually, I didn't start playing music right away. What happened is I was in the 6th grade and I saw somebody demonstrating the trombone, and I became curious about the instrument. So my parents, when I was in Janie Tuitt School, which is in town, my parents eventually moved to Anna's Retreat, and so after I graduated from Janie Tuitt, I went to BCB in country, and so when I went to BCB, I saw there was band on my schedule, and then started taking band lessons, learning about music theory, and then shortly after that, began playing with Ari Ari. So Ari Ari was my first band. So that's how it started.
Okay, I didn't know you was an Ari Ari student also.
Yeah.
His umbrella goes really, really wide. Because I came up on the Ari, Ron came up on the Ari, we all came up on the Ari. So like years later, here you come, and you still on the Ari. That's great, man. So you got you started on the trombone.
Yeah. What happened in the class is most of the boys were going towards like trumpet, saxophone, and drums, and most of the ladies were going towards like flute and clarinet. And I decided, one, because I kept seeing this trombone, and then also I wanted to be different, so that's why I started playing trombone.
Okay.
Ari
Okay. Beautiful. So you and then you started taking lessons, because I remember, hearing that you was doing, formal lessons at home, which is like, I applaud you, because in the islands that's not something that really, really happens. People just go to band classes, like, yeah, I'm a musician, and they're just playing their part, the second trombone part in the band, and not
Hmm.
really realizing that there's more to it from a from a technical standpoint, learning the facilities, the fundamentals, and stuff like that. So, when did you start taking formal lessons?
So what happened is, so after that first year, so we did music theory first, and then the second half of seventh grade is when I started learning about playing the trombone. And so they were like, well, it'll be good for you to like go to the summer band program. So I went to the summer band program, and I was taking lessons with Dr. Trapman, and he was like,
Hmm.
you're real serious about music. What about if you take lessons with me? And I was like, yeah. And so what happened is he spoke with my parents, and he was like, you could come take lessons with me, and if you show up to the lessons for free, show up to the lesson will be free. And so shortly after that, I started taking lessons with Dr. Trotman that summer after seventh grade, and then was taking lessons for free all the way up until high school. So that's how
Okay,
it started.
and you studied classical also, right?
Yeah, yeah. In fact, most of my upbringing was playing classical music, and then I started to get into jazz later on.
Okay. So like somewhere along high school, you switched to jazz and started pursuing that.
Yeah, so I was still playing. I was still playing classical music all the way up until my senior year. In fact, I was still playing it after my senior year. But what happened is, I would see all the elders around the community that were playing jazz, and so I would go out to check out Lewis Taylor. We had his trios playing Backstreet, and then I would go check out Joe Ramsey, and so they were like playing this music, and I was like, man, I need to check this out. So on one hand, I was Dr. Trapman, and I will getting into playing orchestral excerpts and playing concertos, etc. And I was kind of heading in a direction. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna go to Juilliard, but I was hearing this Quelbe music, and then I was also hearing jazz, and the mixture of how many of the musicians at St. Thomas was mixing jazz and calypso, and I was like
Mhm.
pulling my ears towards that direction as well. And so, kind of like in my senior year of high school, I was like, I'm gonna go and study jazz, where everybody was
Yeah,
just like expecting me to study European art music, you know. So
right.
that's what happened.
You see, you made that decision in high school.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay. Hey man, I remember being in New York and hearing about you as I was growing up, and I would come home and
Mm-hmm.
different people, would, hey, so you got to check out Original Cyntje. You got to check out Original Cyntje, and even Dr. Trotman, because I don't know if you know the connection with him and I.
Mm-hmm.
He started me off in music in general in elementary school.
Mm-hmm.
And my first instrument was trombone as well. So there was
Yeah,
a
he told me. Yeah.
connection there. Yeah, yeah. And I credit him, as my first musical father for everything that I did all through high school because he knew my passion was drums and we found a
Mm-hmm.
way to get to that through the trombone. But he made sure that there was a solid foundation musically, which
Mm-hmm.
I think you have also as well, because once you have a great teacher like that, and you do your part, it's important to do your part. You know that.
Yeah,
You
that's right.
will, sky's the limit, man. So the foundation from him is really great, man. So you decide to pursue jazz, graduate from high school, and you come to the U.S. So when you left St. Thomas, where did you go?
So when I left St. Thomas, I went straight to Boston. I went to Berklee College of Music,
Hmm.
and in fact, when I got there, I was still one of the directors would be like, "This cat is like really serious about playing um, European art music." And so many of my colleagues at Berkeley were actually playing jazz as long as I was playing classical music. And so it was like making this switch from playing concertos to playing chord changes, you know. And so that was like my time at Berkeley, just like really making that switch. Because for a long period of time, I was kind of doing both back and forth. And so Berkeley, and shortly after Berkeley was when I started really making the switch to playing mostly jazz.
Yeah. What year did you go to Berkeley?
I went to Berkeley in '93.
Okay,
I went to Berkeley in
okay.
'93.
And so after Berkeley, you found your way where? Because you moved around a lot. You're
Yeah,
one of
so
those guys that like understand the move.
Yeah, so I spent some time in Boston, and then after that, I came to the DC area shortly after that. I went to St. Thomas for a brief moment, and then I came to the DC area, and then I was in the DC area for a period of time. And then, well, there was a short period of time I came to New York briefly, but I was settled in the DC area. Um, Probably 1997 is when I officially moved to the DC area. And then I was in DC for a while, and then I moved to New York for about 4 or 5 years to make some connections. And then after I did that, I moved back to the DC area, and then I just come up to New York to do gigs.
Okay.
And so I've been settled in the DC area officially since 2003, 2004. So then, the connections that I made in Boston and the connection I made in New York is kind of like how things are set up now. Like everything that I did in that period of time, I'm benefiting from now.
Right. It's funny how that is. You see all the work you do back then, and it's like you're ripping up. It's like planting a tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. So that's great, man. So let me ask you this:
Mm-hmm.
you settle into DC, you're playing all these gigs. Tell us some of the musicians you work with, because you've been out there
Mm-hmm.
and you've done a lot of great things. So share with us some of the musicians you work with.
Sure. So early on, I've early on I worked with in this big band situation. I think around 2001. There's a lot of musicians before then, but I'll say 2001. Worked with Illinois Jacques Big Band. I did that for about 3, 4 years, and in that big band is where I met some other colleagues like Sean Jones and Julius Torrentino, and this other cat named Danny Kirkham. Julius is
Hmm.
now, I think, at New York Jazz Academy.
Hmm.
Sean is now the director of jazz studies at Peabody. So I met a lot of musicians within that band, and then I did smaller groups with them, and then I met other musicians. Um, so many different cats. I think along that time, later on, a few years later, I met Jason Moran, and we did a gig at the Kennedy Center, and then that led to now with me touring with his band. Um, with different big band situations, working with Jasmine Horn and working with, I know it's a long list of people, but
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
it,
Well, I just want the audience to just see how versed you are. With
mhm.
Jason, were you with his the bandwagon band?
Yeah, so yeah, I played with the big bandwagon. So
Okay, the big bandwagon. Okay,
yeah, so that's what he calls it. So we recorded this album um, from dance hall to the battlefield. Oh no, or
okay,
from the battlefield to the dance hall. It's a tribute to James Reese Europe, and so we take the
okay.
music of
Oh, nice.
Europe and then put it in a modern context. And so we've been touring that album for the last. We've been playing the music since 2018, but we've been touring the album since 2023, 2022, 23. We've
Okay,
been playing the music of the album before we recorded the album, and then since we recorded the album, we've been touring the album. So
great, great. And through all of this, you became a band leader and you
yeah,
created your own platform.
so I became a band leader probably when I was, I don't know, 22. And so what I noticed quickly, and from speaking with different trombonists, they kind of share a similar thing. Um, the trombone is not necessarily a popular instrument, right? And so if I just wanted to play in a big band situation, that'd be great. But I wanted to do a lot of small group stuff. So what I did is, when I saw there wasn't a lot of small group opportunities for trombone players, I started my own group so that way I could kind of create that thing. And so I started my own group back in 1998, and then we've been doing different performances since then. And then since starting the group, we recorded 7 albums as a band, and it's been fairly the same members with few personnel changes depending on what music I'm getting into. But it's been mostly of the same cats since 1998, and we've done some small tours. Like right now, we're getting ready to do a tour of different HBCUs. So we're going to go into HBCUs and do like a workshop and then do a concert. So we're going to start that in October and then do a few HBCUs until I think about January or February. So
Beautiful.
that band, we're still pretty active. We're going to be featured at a DC Jazz Festival in August. And
Okay.
it's interesting because we did the first DC Jazz Festival when it was a Duke Ellington Jazz Festival back in 2004, and so now 20 years later we'll be featured at the festival.
Okay. And who are the band members?
Now the band members are Alan Johnson on piano, Herman Burney on bass, Lenny Robinson on drums, and this cat named Brian Settles on tenor saxophone. Brian and I also
nice.
plays Jason Moran's band. So Brian and I,
Okay.
we not only work together in my group, but we also work in Jason's band as well.
That's a great band, man. I know Lenny personally, man. Please give him my best. He's a good drummer. Good feel, he's good people, man. Yeah.
I've known him
Great. So
for a while.
7 CDs, you're doing your thing. The band is touring. You have a number of projects, and but you're also an educator, which is something that I really admire, because when I look at the musicians that have come from the Virgin Islands, and what's happening in the Virgin Islands, so it's it's um it's a rich musical environment from a
Yes, sir.
cultural standpoint, but from a academic standpoint, is we have to like search for that information. And you've done a really great job, awesome job is coming up here and finding that information for yourself, and developing yourself to a certain level. So you're now in a really, really good position as an educator. Why don't you talk about that?
Sure. So I took over this position at Duke Ellington School of the Arts. I'm now the director of jazz studies there. And when I first started at the program, there were 2 jazz studies classes. There was just the jazz orchestra and the jazz combo. But the students needed some information to help them be able to, play in those classes. Whether it's a jazz combo situation where they're dealing with playing over chord changes, or in a jazz orchestra, just understanding the history of music. So when I got there, I saw that there was a need to build a curriculum. So I wrote a curriculum for, kind of like a similar thing that I've done on the college level. And so I wrote this curriculum that would include jazz theory and jazz history and composition, etc. Every year that I've been there, I've added 1 or 2 classes, with the help of the admin and support from the department. And so now we're up to 8 jazz studies classes,
Nice.
And in addition to that, we now, for a long time, jazz studies weren't necessarily part of juries. Like the students would have to just do juries that were based on and European art music, which is fine. But for the jazz studies majors that were going to off to college, they didn't have the opportunity to prep for their college audition the way other students did. And so now we have jazz studies that are part of the juries. And then the last thing that I wanted to do was to be able to have funds set aside for people to come in to give workshops, like have somebody to come in that can work with just the trumpet students, and have someone come in that work with the saxophone students, etc.
Right.
So that was approved of earlier this year, and so we're going to implement more of that coming in the next school year. And then the other thing that I do is I create partnerships with institutions. So I have a partnerships with Peabody that I send 2 students to Peabody every year to audition, and once they get in, they get a full ride to Peabody. I have a partnership with the DC Jazz Festival. So, if they have an artist in town and they want to bring the artist towards the school, there's like this working partnership with the DC Jazz Festival. So there's like all of these, producing concerts and, curriculum writing and teaching about, there's all of these different layers that go into the position. And there's also activism and advocacy that's like offline conversation, just dealing with the connection between the school and DCPS, etc. So there's all these different layers that the stuff that deals with being the director of jazz studies. That's more than just teaching music.
It always is, it's great, man. And I applaud you for taking the helm and doing that. Coming from the Virgin Islands, being the director of jazz studies at the Duke Ellington School of Arts. I mean, that's amazing. accomplishment, and it's kudos to you because it's really a beautiful thing to
Hmm.
show that your proficiency that you've developed is warranting that position, and you're doing an awesome job there, man. So congratulations.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So outside of being an educator and band leader, you know composer, tell us about your writing style because you have some wonderful music and you compose some really
Hmm.
amazing things that's very unique to the trombone and also from a cultural standpoint coming from the Virgin Islands as well. So tell us a little bit about your compositional concept.
So I started studying composition a long time ago. I guess while I was learning about the styles of different composers or different performers like Freddie Hubbard or Junior Johnson, etc. I was also listening to the way they compose. And in any great solo, by an excellent musician, there's a layer of composition in there. And so to understand more about them, I would study their compositions. So I started studying compositions a long time ago, and just getting into just the nuts and bolts of composing. But then, like the way I speak and the way I play, I also make sure there's cultural heritage. The first songs I heard were the songs of Quelbe tunes like Queen Mary, etc. Growing up in the Caribbean, and then playing with a lot of the calypso bands, the jam band, the Imagination, the Wrecking Crew. Just spending like in my early 20s playing with a lot of those bands. All of that information is inside of my head. So when I sit down to compose, all my experiences go into the composition. And I so don't
Hmm.
necessarily like I know all the tools and I study the tools, but when I sit down to compose, I usually start with like um, a concept, like maybe a feeling or emotion or maybe a theme, because a lot of my albums are theme based. So I'll start with a theme, and then there will like these titles will come to me from these different themes, and then after that, I will sit down and then write a song that fits that theme. So it almost be like a meditation. It's like when I was whether it's the Rise of the Protester album or it's the Spiritual Awakening album or it's the most recent one, Gentle Touch. I would sit down and then all the pieces would sound like it's part of a novel because they were all composed around the same time. So I like to
Right.
I like concept albums and I like music that has like a connection to it. So when I sit down to compose, it's like I'm writing a novel and every song is like a chapter in that book. That's usually what happens. Like I don't just like write a song and just put it down and then write another song and put it down and then put them all together on an album. I kind of like it's more like they're all part of like this story that I'm telling. And so when the listener is listening to the music, they could be like, oh, that's part of this overarching concept of like these tunes that all fit together, you know. So that's kind of the vibe.
Conceptually, I call it a sound story.
Yeah.
You talk about like, chapter one, chapter two, the various chapters
Hmm.
in a novel. It's a sound story that you're telling. So you have a musical novel that you're telling, and each song is a chapter or a story within that sound
Hmm.
story. Yeah, that's what I call it. So it's conceptually, it's a great thing, man. And you're doing an awesome job at that. And I really applaud you for your stick to itiveness because being out here as a young musician, I see and I hear a lot of guys coming up and I have conversations with them and they say, man, I hear this, but in order for me to work, I have to play this way. And I said, no, you don't have to do that.
Hmm.
You could find your way. Yes, you
That's
have to
right.
do things to make a living. You take certain gigs like, I don't know about you, but when I first came to New York, maybe about my first 8 to 10 years, I played in wedding bands. That
Hmm.
was bread and butter. I made a certain amount of money, and I knew that was consistent. If I took 10 wedding, you know, band gigs a year, I knew how much money I was going to make, and it kind of panned out to that. But from a creative standpoint, you're working towards developing your sound. You're
Yep.
working towards playing with other improvisational musicians that you could be on, their gigs or be in their band and be on their recordings. But as far as creating your sound, there's a level of stick to itiveness that you need to have to just say, hey, it's going to take me 10 years or 15 years to get to this point. So, but in the process, I still need to make a living, but I'm going to still work on that. And that's something that you've done. as I listen to your music and I hear you play, and you know, I hear the growth musically of you personally as a musician. So I applaud you for that because not everybody gets that.
Oh, I know. I mean, it's like a marathon, and the idea is, I mean, that anyone that we listen to and we check out their catalog, and one of our primary examples is like John Coltrane, because we can hear John Coltrane from infancy musically to like just fully just understanding everything is connected, and so being able to see that growth within John Coltrane is that's the kind of like the idea is that you just it's a marathon. You keep going, keep going, keep going. Have this growth mindset, and eventually get to everything you're searching
Right, right. That's great, man. Well, I think our audience is, they're eager to hear the
for.
sound of Reginald Cyntje. We've been talking
All right.
for a while. You've given us a great, solid foundation of who you are. So let's just jump into some of your music, some of your recordings.
Okay.
We have the first song we have up is "The Morning After." So
Mm-hmm.
we'll listen to it and then you'll share that with us.
Sure.
Morning After. Yeah, what year was that?
That was just released this year. So we released that
Okay,
album in January.
2024. Okay, so that's brand new.
Yeah, yeah, we just released it
And
in January.
that's the same group.
Yeah,
Lenny
same
Robinson, Alan.
Alan Johnson, and this album, instead of Brian on tenor saxophone, I got a flautist, Jamal Brown, who's playing flute in this album.
Okay, I was gonna ask about it, Jamal Brown. Okay, nice, nice. And what's the concept behind the morning after?
So I was thinking, so this album in general is dealing. So the concept behind this album is called a gentle touch, and it's kind of like about being vulnerable in love, but then more importantly, like being able to be gentle with self and others when you're talking about issues around love. And so the morning after, actually, it was the different titles I was thinking about when I was naming this one. So I was thinking about after the sunrise, etc. And so the idea is that sometimes when we are going through stuff, like we have all of these challenges and difficulties that we're dealing with, and then when we get to the end of it, then we could kind of celebrate that journey of going through all of that stuff. So the mornings after is like after going through the night, like almost like going through a hurricane at night time, and then the morning after everything is calm, right? And so that's where you have all these chord changes and this movement, and so there's this groove, but then it's like when you look at the chord changes, like they're like really challenging to play. So it's like when
Mm.
you go through something and then being able to celebrate going through that thing and how the relationship or whatever it is a lot better after going through the thing.
And
So
then,
that's
but the
what's up.
melodies,
Yep.
it's like really, it's nice and flowing too. So you have
Yep.
these kind of complex chord changes, but they have this really simplified, singable
Hmm.
melody on top that kind of guides you through. It's like a serene melody that guides you through the whole process.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice, man. I like that. I like that. That's a keeper. I'm gonna add that to my playlist.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. A
morning
lot of
after.
folks, a lot of
Great,
folks really enjoyed it, which is sometimes really challenging when you write a tune like that where there's like the harmony is like and so it's like when folks can enjoy a thing like that when it's the harmony is challenging but the melody kind of locks them in,
right, right, right. Yeah.
and the musicians
People
kind
want
of
to be
look at
able to tap their feet.
yeah, so the musicians kind of looked at me cross-eyed as well when we were playing it because it was like how do I solo over these chord changes kind of thing. you know so
So, God, but at the end of the day, people can pat their feet, sit back, and groove to it, and this happen.
yeah, enjoy
Yeah.
it.
So you got the best of both worlds. You're challenging the musicians, but you're pleasing the audience.
Yep.
It's
That's
nice,
good.
nice, beautiful, beautiful. So now we're gonna jump into your next composition that you share with us. And this is a cultural ditty, a little piece that you wrote entitled "Mirror Soul." Let's check it out. Yeah, man. Mirror Soul. I like that. I
So
like that. That's Caribbean influence.
yes, yes, yes. All the music, in some way, shape, or form, some kind of influence from home.
Okay. So you got that type of vibe going on. So tell us about that song. What's the story behind the title?
So the song is kind of like a journey. So it starts off with the piano intro, kind of like when I wrote the song, I recorded myself playing the piano with it being like a ballad, and I recorded myself playing the piano with it being the vibe that it is when it finally gets going. So it starts off like a piano thing, kind of beginning the journey, and then it builds all the way through until the very end. So there are like two concepts that they're both kind of related. So there's a story of this supreme being that existed in time, and so what ended up happening is that the god said, "We're going to split this being in half." And so the
Okay.
idea was that this being is going to spend its entire life finding its other half until it finally comes back together, right? And so mirror soul is kind of like human beings finding their mirror or their twin, and then eventually they meet their twin, and then it's like all of this energy went from meeting their twin, the negative and the positive. So the energy being like everything that you like about yourself, but also the things that you don't really like about yourself, and you've seen it in somebody else, and so you're like you can appreciate all the beautiful things, but you can also see like these things I don't really like, and that energy that happens when you this being starts coming back together, you know, that's what the song is about. And then there's the idea of
Mm.
like last year when I composed a song, there were all of these different things going on, And to capture all the things that were going on, I wrote this melody to capture those things. So it's like the combination
Okay.
of those songs.
Great. Great. And there was a vocalist at the end.
Yes.
That's kind of like
Yes.
snuck in there. Who's that?
Yeah. That's Demia. She actually singing the melody with me,
Right.
and towards the end, then she comes in and she starts soloing. You know, and some of my
Okay.
albums I
Oh,
use a vocalist to kind of capture that sound of voice and trombone kind of blended together. I like that sound.
nice. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful blend. Beautiful blend. Beautiful blend. So what I'm enjoying is the nice array of, you know, selections that you put together, and also the way you kind of line it up. So I actually I'm looking forward to the next composition because it's a duet,
Hmm.
and to hear trombone piano duet is something that's like, you know, not too many people take that chance and do
I
that.
know. I know.
But you're Reginald Cyntje, so I know you're gonna make it happen, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to it. So let's check out this next composition. It's called Magnetism. Uh, so um, so let's check it out. We might be having a little bit of technical difficulty here with the song coming up. Not sure what's going on. 1 second. Magnetism is not coming up. It's not loading up. All right. So while we're working that out, it's a piano duet.
Yeah.
So share with us until we get it
Sure, no
resolved.
problem.
Share with us what the
So
song is
in
about.
so magnetism is from the Healing album, and so in in 2019, 2018, 2019, Alan and we were doing a lot of duet concerts, trombone and piano. There's some videos of us playing Cherokee and some other tunes, etc. And so we kept saying that we need to do an album together. And I was like, yeah, because Alan and I have been playing together since, I don't know, 1997. Yes, so shortly after I moved to DC
Mhm.
area, Alan and I started playing together. So we've been talking about doing this duet album for many years because we've done duet gigs. And then, so I wrote this music back in 2019. As I was promoting the Rise of the Protester album, which came out in 2019. I wrote this music, but
Mhm.
I was like, I need to set it aside because I'm just focusing on the Rise of the Protester album. But then shortly after that, COVID happened, so everything
Okay.
shut down. So to give myself like something to do, I decided I'm going to work in this music that I just wrote. And so I was working in the music, and then I was seeing exactly what my students were going through, and I was seeing, what family was going through, etc. So the original meaning for the music changed meaning as I was working in the music during COVID, and then we recorded it in September of 2020. So magnetism is kind of like part of this overall thing of like, what are some of the things that you need to heal, right? So there are these different themes on the Healing album, and magnetism is one of them. So that's kind of.
Okay. Great. So let me ask you this.
Mhm.
That's great, and from a conceptual standpoint, that's great. How is it playing duet? I mean, you've been doing it for a while. You've
Mhm.
been doing some eclectic things. So, I don't compare you to the average jazz trombone player that I know that
Mhm.
say, hey man, I'm just gonna learn all the jazz standards and go to the jazz sessions to do that because
Mhm.
your background's a little bit different. But playing um, piano duet versus playing an ensemble, how is that different for you as a performer? What how do you see it
So
conceptually?
it's for me, it feels more intimate, right? So like
Mhm.
when we've done different we've Alan and I perform in a lot of different duet situations. So the first thing is that there's no hiding, right? You can't hide behind the drums, you can't hide behind the bass. You have to be able to play in a context and capture all of the emotions that exist within music in a very intimate setting. Um, your sense of time, your sense of harmony, being able to play a melody in a certain way without anything covering up, without the cymbals covering up, or an interesting bass line. So the first challenge in playing a duet situation is like really knowing and hearing all of the pieces of an ensemble in a very small setting. It's like
Right.
how do you be how do you like there's this concept of everybody's a drummer, right? And so the idea, no matter what instrument you play drums. And so you have to make sure the time is solid. You gotta make sure the groove is solid. You gotta make sure that you're playing through the tune in a way that the listener can feel all of those things, even if it's just piano and trombone. So by playing in a duet
Right.
situations, we had that concept in mind, and so when we sat down to record the album, all of those things came out.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, I'm really excited to hear. Let's check it out. Magnetism. Yep. We're still having technical difficulty.
You
All right. Well, since we're having technical difficulties, I want to once we get it resolved from behind the scene, we'll come back to magnetism. But let me ask you this: so, what do you see for Reginald Cyntje coming up in the future? Because you have a number of things on your plate. You have
Mhm.
lines in the fire. Right now, you have stability with your teaching job at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. Some great gigs, man. You're playing with, some wonderful, amazing musicians, composing some wonderful music. You just released a project. What's on the horizon for Reginald Cyntje?
So one of the things, especially since I've been playing with Jason Moran, is the idea of just seeing how musicians are thriving in the 21st century.
Mm.
And so the one of the things I like about his setup is he's the director at the Kennedy Center. He's, you know what I mean. He's all of his hands on these different things, and then he also have the grants and all of that stuff. So, what I've been working on recently is like I have a grant writer, and part of the things that's going to fund the tour that we're doing is going to be funded in part by a grant. And so it's finding ways in which um, I can play as much as I can and not have to worry about fighting with club owners, you know what I mean? Or saying,
Hmm.
well, your instrument is, I don't know about your instrument leading a group at this particular venue. I don't have to worry about that. I can just be like, I'm going to put on this project and I know that it's already funded by these different entities,
Right.
right?
Mm.
So I'm working on ways in which I can have more freedom in music, more freedom as an artist to just be able to create um, music and compose and do these interesting concerts, whether I'm doing something with a visual artist or I'm doing something at a museum or I'm doing something at a university. Um, as far as education, um, my predecessor was at the Duke Ellington School of the Arts for 40 years. I don't see myself being there for 40 years, but I want to make sure that when I leave the program, the next cat comes into a very nice and comfortable situation. So I'm trying to make sure
Right.
that the program is built up in a way and stuff is ingrained in the curriculum in a way that it's there for
Hmm.
the end of time, because it took a long time to get it to this point. And there was a point in time where there was no jazz allowed on campus at Duke Ellington School of the Arts. Um, so yeah, just as much music as possible, as much freedom in music. Um, you know, um, I've been working on possibilities of getting some sync licensing opportunities, so that way the music is either in a commercial or whatever the case might be. Just different ways in which all of this investment that I've made in music as a performer, as a composer, as an educator, I can reap some of those benefits and just enjoy more freedom over time, and just enjoy playing music, without
Right.
having to like
That's great.
hustle.
That's great. One of the things that that's great. That's great, man. All of that is commendable, man. And I really I'm happy to hear you say that because so many times we've had elders leave positions and then you come in and you kind of have to like figure it out after the fact. So the fact that you're thinking ahead, you're playing it forward to say like when I leave here, the person that steps in, not only that, I build it from two classes to eight, maybe 10, maybe 12, and everything's going to be lined up. That's commendable because that shows continuity and
Mm-hmm.
being who Duke Ellington was as an icon. No, not is as an icon, but who he was as a performer, band leader, um, what he brought to the table have you know created a level, a very high level of quality
Yeah.
that the school represents. And you being there, you've embraced that. And I can hear it in what you're saying. When you leave here, you want the person stepping to walk into a situation where everything is laid out and it's part
Yep.
of the culture. It's not something that you have to, like, you have to build this. That person shouldn't have to build it. Should just come in and be able to sustain and tweak, what's
Yep.
happening. Other thing that I like that you said is that, in this new era of being a performer, man, gigs it's just a challenge doing gigs out there because every club owner has its challenges, and we all have a set price that we want to make, but then you have to barter with a club and you have to barter with a festival, and if you're not a big name, it's only five or six big names. Everybody else falls in between, and
Mm-hmm.
then all of the pop artists are getting all the jazz festival gigs. That's like a whole other thing. So what I enjoyed, what I really like the fact that you say that, you have a grant writer and you're developing projects.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way to go. That's something that I've been sharing that with my colleagues for many years. It's like, man, let's build projects and shop the project. And even if you can't shop the project, the fact that it's grant funded, everybody will benefit from it, and
That's right.
our community benefit from it because the way when we came to the city or when we came on the scene, the gigs aren't like that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
The gigs aren't
like
like that anymore.
yes, it's different. Like I remember Dave Matthews had a big band, and that big band was funded in part by grants. There's some bands that not Dave Matthews, Dave Holland. The big band was funded by grants, and then he had a small group that he was taking on the road that was funded in part by grants. So it's just that the idea of this, if it's like, I tell students all the time, have the conversations and just see how people are thriving in this thing, not surviving but thriving, and then see how you can kind of
Mhm.
create your thing that kind of matches that way in which others are thriving in this music thing.
Yeah. I mean, I can honestly say the days of making a living as just a performing musician, I mean, they're limited. They're limited. I did it. I lived in New York for 30 years, man, and I did it, I think, 20 years of that time, and I was comfortable. But I could see it tapering off because the scene changed. You know, it's the industry changed,
Mm-hmm.
streaming changed. A lot of the record companies didn't jump on the fact that streaming is a major. It was a new component. MP3s and downloading and all that stuff was a factor. A lot of them didn't play into that. So then a lot of artists got dropped from labels because they weren't selling because everybody's screaming. So the artists always get the back end of what's
Mm-hmm.
happening. The industry is going to look out for itself, and things are going to happen on that level. And this, hey, no good guy, bad guy. It's just the reality. So from a
That's right.
creative standpoint, you have to look at what's happening and make sure that you understand the path to sustain who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you understand that, like you figured it out, sustainability. I've always said from the time I left St. Thomas in '85, education, you can't fail with education. You can't
Mm-hmm.
fail with education. No matter what's happening in your environment, education is going to always be on the table. It's going to always be on the table. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
beautiful thing, man. It's really a beautiful thing. I want to thank you for being on the show, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know we had some technical difficulties, man. I would
No
love to make
problems.
it up to you and have you come back, and so we can really present the rest of your music to our audience and tell more of your story because you're doing some amazing things. But just tell our audience how they can follow you, how they can connect with
Sure.
you, and what you have
Sure.
going on.
They can find me. So of course my website, reginaldcyntje.com. They can follow me on Facebook. So again, Reginald Cyntje on Facebook. Reginald Cyntje Music on Instagram. Reginald Cyntje on Twitter. And if they like LinkedIn, Reginald Cyntje on LinkedIn, they could watch videos on YouTube or Instagram. I'm all over the place. So just type my name in on Google and just follow the links to what comes up on Google. I'm all over the place.
Great, great. Well, Reginald Cyntje, man, thank you again for taking the time out of your busy schedule. It was great hanging out with you last week in St. Thomas for the Big
Yes,
Band
sir.
concert, man.
Always
We
good
look
to be
forward
home.
to doing it again.
Hmm.
Yes, yes. And I wish you continued success, and we will be in touch. We'll definitely have you back on because we have a lot of music that we didn't even get to. So,
They, they can go check out, whether they download or the stream or they use Bandcamp. They can go check out all the things. Everything is there for them to listen to.
great. All right. We have a beautiful evening, man. And
All
ladies
right.
and gentlemen, uh, Reginald Cyntje, thank you. Take care.
Thank you for having me. All right then.
All right.
JBH Boutique Care offers you a unique exclusive membership in our nationwide concierge medical services network. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Judine Bontemps-Hill. I'm double board certified in family and obesity medicine. We pair exclusive personalized care with accessibility and convenience. A better way for you to receive immediate quality medical care. Whether at our main Orlando, Florida office, traveling across the U.S. or visiting the States, we bring you the best medical care without waiting for an appointment. Become a member today by calling 407-234-5282 or visit us online at jbhmed1.com. JBH Boutique Care is proud to sponsor Sounds of the Diaspora, music and conversations with artists, and host Dion Parson every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Source TV Radio Network, WTSN, Washington, D.C.